Welcome to a special edition of As the World Turns, and no, not the soap opera. Today we're going to be counting down
the top 10 events in world history since the beginning of the 20th century.
Yes, thank you, Ben, for that lovely ad-lib. As I was saying,
we will be taking you back in time through history to show you 10 events that shaped the world we live in today.
We will begin our journey in the first decade of the 20th century.
In Asia!
Enter Puyi, the young Chinese emperor who abdicated the throne amidst the crumbling of not only the Qing dynasty, but thousands of years of Chinese imperial rule. A multitude of external and internal factors contributed to this debilitation, including foreign penetration and pressures.
Hey, open up your borders! We want China! Let us in or else!
No! Mom, you said this would be easy!
The rise of the Kuomintang Nationalist Party.
Hey, your dynasty is falling. If you don't let me be China's leader, it won't be long until your whole empire collapses.
Well, I'm the imperial government, and I'm supposed to have the power. Mom!
Oh.
And the decreasing political impact of the scholar gentry. Other factors include failure to keep up with Western innovations across all fields, poor educational standards and systems, and a growing displeasure from the peasantry, who were burdened with political economic inflation, and in turn, increased taxation.
The downfall of the Qing dynasty led to the rise of the People's Republic of China. This became the first communist state and was the beginning of the China that is still in place today.
You really shouldn't be eating Chinese food on set.
You're right. Let's move on to number 9 in our countdown, the South African Apartheid.
Just as it was under Mao's communist rule in China, many people were discriminated against and killed during the age of the apartheid.
Let's take a look so I can eat in peace.
End this segregation. This is not a way to run a country. End apartheid!
Apartheid! Oh my god, I don't know how she expects to play a good Nelson Mandela. She can't even pronounce the exact word she's trying to advocate. Amateur hour.
You cannot expect us to uproot our government and change our ways just because you are unhappy.
Everybody is unhappy.
No, the white people aren't.
But the whites are only a small fraction of the population. You do realize how unjust this is to neglect 90% of your people.
I don't care. You are under arrest. Put your hands behind your back
What?
right now.
You cannot do this.
It's already the 1970s. We're the most influential country in Africa. We're not going to undermine our own reputation for your sake.
You never know. One day I might be president.
Yeah, get in there, get in there.
Oh, I see what they did there. Good foreshadowing.
Fair, I should be out there rallying with my people. I want to end the apartheid.
Apartheid! It's not that hard to pronounce.
Whatever.
Unbelievable.
Free Mandela, end apartheid today! Free South Africa!
Today I stand before you as the president of a free and unoppressed South Africa. With the end of the apartheid, we will no longer be ruled by a minority. We can finally be a country of the people.
You realize you are at work, right?
I'm supposed to starve?
Anywho, the end of apartheid was a very important historical event. It created the current state of South Africa and perpetuated the trend of global desegregation. Nelson Mandela will forever be recognized as a symbol of peace and prosperity across the world.
If you're done being a distraction, Will, I'd like to continue the countdown. So, at number 8, we have...
The Cold War!
Speaking of cold...
Let's get down to our talented actors.
Oh, sorry, Will, I gotta act for this one. Try to bust out the Russian accent whenever I can.
I took a class this summer.
We will feast on the children of the United States. The Soviet Union will rise to its true position as the one true world power. We will bury you. The United States is facing a serious threat to her national security. The Soviets have refused to remove their missiles from the island of Cuba. We will do our best to maintain our peaceful state and avoid this threat. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. The Soviet Union might think that they are the leaders of nuclear weaponry, but our missiles in Turkey counteract their Cuban missiles. The United States might think that they are the leaders of nuclear weaponry, but our missiles in Cuba counteract their Turkish missiles. We will be the one true power. We will be the one true power. I am glad to report that the people of the United States, that the global catastrophe has been avoided, Both countries have agreed to remove our weapons from each other's neighboring countries, and we are glad to move forward peacefully. This Cold War has come to an end. Do not think that this is a sign of weakness of the Soviet Union, but the nuclear war will not benefit anyone. We will still remain as the communist leaders of the globe.
The Cold War was an extremely important historical event. It was the closest the world has ever come to a nuclear war.
A nuclear war between the United States and the Soviet Union would have caused a ripple effect of chaos, but it was very significant that the two countries were able to move past their differences and actually stay peaceful.
And technically speaking, the United States won the Cold War. For the Soviet Union broke up and we didn't! America! Alright, Lily, Caitlin. Time to go back to doing your jobs.
Oh.
Go back. Number 7 in our countdown is...
Shouldn't you wait for Ben?
Ha! I got this one. Number 7 on our countdown is new political trends that swept across the globe. In 1922, Benito Mussolini became one of the pioneers of the development of fascism in Italy. He led the country as prime minister until his ousting in 1940. Oh no. Lily, can you cover the rest of this? I have to go be Hitler for a sec.
Okay.
9! Oxen, Duxen, Deutschen! What? Where's Ben? I guess we'll just have to skip this scene.
From that point on, Hitler utilized Mussolini's pure form of fascism as a base for his new totalitarian regime, known as Nazism. The basis of Nazism was social Darwinism, and the image of the perfect society, leading to growing acceptance of anti-Semitism within the Nazi state and increasing influence of the implementation of the Holocaust.
This initiation of Nazism was the foundation for World War II, and as World War II progressed, the dichotomy of democracy versus communism was one that could be experienced throughout all the world's societies. This ideology of the perfect society fueled other political movements, including the segregation contention in the United States in the 1960s, and as previously mentioned, apartheid in South Africa in the second half of the 20th century.
Good.
Yeah.
One simply has to look at today's political systems to see the impact that it has had on the world through the 21st century. Today, more than 15 countries have adopted the democratic system of government. These systems and their values have been pervasive in today's society and will likely continue to develop through tomorrow.
We are almost a quarter through our countdown and would now like to bring you a quick commercial brought to you by our sponsor.
Are you tired of being told no?
No! I mean, yes!
If you are, join the crusade at jihad.com.
Jihad.com offers everything one needs to know.
Meet fellow jihadis with the same interests as you.
No, that's jihadmingle.com.
Guys, we practiced this so many times. Just stick to the script.
Alright, jihad.com will teach you all you want to know about being a missionary.
We can teach you how to work out like a jihad.
And look at my gun!
That's too small.
No, it ain't.
Just get closer.
Bigger now?
Alright, let's show them our jingle. 3, 2, 1. Jihad.com. We'll put the G in your hod. Trust me, it's the bomb.com.
Ba-dum-bum.
Now a more serious event taking place closer to home in the Big Apple. We all know it as the day Al-Qaeda attacked the United States. Number 6 on our countdown are the events that occurred on September 11th, 2001.
9/11 was a tragic point in world history. It was a very modern example of violence on civilians at times that they thought they were safe. Before 9/11, nobody even considered airports and planes areas that needed guarding.
The deplorable events that ensued on that fateful day would prove to change the course of American and world mentality towards the issue of terrorism. Terrorism, by definition, is deliberate and purely evil in nature, and few attacks in history will be as influential as 9/11. As you can see, these attacks were evil, unjustified, and upsetting to the American people.
However, America proved to be stronger and persevered through such hard times. We stood together, increased security, and pledged to protect our country.
Like the United States, countries everywhere have felt the incapacitating effects of terrorism. But, by seeing such a world superpower ripped apart, the rest of the world took the initiative to promulgate national security as a priority of the country.
This event truly was an eye-opener in our world history, as many precautionary measures were taken on a global scale. 9/11 also prompted the United States to engage in the war on terror. This is a war we are still fighting today.
We're halfway through the countdown. Number 5 on our list is
Dun, dun, dun.
the Great Depression. Enter New York, 1932. The world is in the grips of the Depression. One of these manual laborers' mother was of dubious birth. This means she was a whore.
Hey, my mom was not a whore, but she did die of cholera at age 23.
Wait, you can hear me? And I'm pretty sure you mean chlamydia.
Anyway, the Great Depression was a particularly influential happening in world history because it was the precipitant event of World War I and the residual costs of said war. World War I was the world's first total war, so it only makes sense that the economic recession that followed would impact the whole globe. Millions in America and beyond were left unemployed and unable to pay rent and mortgages, and dependent, in some cases, on soup kitchens just for sustenance.
Hard labor was one of the very few available, strenuous, and low-wage jobs that most people living in the Great Depression era had to rely on to make some semblance of income.
Before the economy went down the drain, I was an upper-middle-class man. Now, all I can afford is bread and jam. I can't even provide for my 2 children.
I don't want any bread and jam.
Well, too bad, because we're in the middle of the Depression, and that's all you get.
Wow, living in the Depression must have really sucked.
It does.
As you can see, the Great Depression hurt the Americas as well as Europe in many ways that lowered their economic lifestyles. The Great Depression was one of the most hardening and longest-lasting economic crises in the history of the industrialized Western world.
Today, we are lucky to live in a world without such problems that occurred in our past. However, we are nowhere near the end of our fight, and the fear of another depression is always in the minds of many civilians of all social status.
Ever since we talked about the Cold War, our mechanics thought it would be funny if we dropped the air conditioning in the studio by 30 degrees.
Thanks, Jim.
Now, you should all be well educated about the Great Depression, so you may be wondering what caused such a depressing event. And that would be the even more traumatic and terrifying World War I.
World War I, as previously mentioned, was the world's first total war. Total war is an all-inclusive war, meaning there were no limits to artillery, participants, or geographic area on which the war was fought. In fact, my great-grandfather passed away fighting in this war. He was shot to death. I'm sick of you being so insensitive and not taking anything seriously. I'm taking my break. Do the rest of the special without me.
Ben, you ruined the scene. I was supposed to be Germany, and Will was supposed to be Great Britain, and I was going to defeat him. Can we just do it without Will?
No, it should be the other way around, you dummy. The Triple Entente, Russia, France, and Great Britain won World War I, not the Central Powers. You of all people should know this if you were planning on being Germany. After all, this country suffered the whole blame for the war, had to pay a massive amount of money, and had punitive military and territorial provisions imposed at the Treaty of Versailles.
Wait, what was the Treaty of Versailles?
That sounds like something I would say.
Alright, so for our friends who have forgotten, the Treaty of Versailles was one of the most important impacts that World War I had. It was a peace treaty that occurred post-World War I. However, it was not fair because it only invited representatives from certain countries, and it excluded Germany. Germany was not okay with this at all, because number 1, they were not invited, number 2, they had to take 100% of the blame for the whole war, and number 3, were burdened with paying high amounts of reparations, giving obtained land back to its inhabitants, and had to limit amount of men and artillery it could have in their national army. As I just said before.
Yeah, even I know that World War I helped spark the Second World War and influence Hitler to carry out his mass destruction. With the unfair treatment of Germany throughout the Treaty of Versailles and post-World War I, a second war was bound to happen. The main events that occurred in the rest of the 20th century were directly or indirectly a result of World War I.
The Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, World War II, the Holocaust, and the development of the atomic bomb are all direct influences, while more indirectly related are the Great Depression, the Cold War, and the collapse of European colonialism. Next up on our top 10 events is
Globalization. Facebook, internet, iPhones, hello, we should all be experts on this.
Don't forget about my favorite, Instagram.
Alright, all these devices helping people around the world get more connected. There you go.
We've come a long way since the first airplanes soared through the sky, just barely lifting off the ground in 1903. And hey, it might not be long until we're traveling via hovercraft.
Ben, I'm not sure why you have McDonald's, considering you can get that anywhere in the world. You were just in Cairo.
Well, one of the trade-offs of globalization is that these multinational corporations, like McDonald's and other popular worldwide food places, are replacing the local one-of-a-kind restaurants that you would find in areas like Cairo and across the globe. This trend is exhibited not only through restaurant chains, but also through elements of Western culture, which have progressively been picking away at these indigenous facets.
Third world countries have benefited, though, from globalization. For example, interregional help can be provided for third world countries, and said countries now have more access to human essentials as a result, water being the most important.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Globalization is definitely a positive world revolution. It is continuously improving, and hey, maybe tomorrow I'll be eating breakfast made by a personal robot chef.
Well, we don't want to spark that debate of whether globalization is considered positive or negative, for those say that it is positive for it brings these areas of contact and new technology across from the first world countries to the third world countries, but then again, the arguments can be made that globalization is creating a one homogeneous world culture. It's getting down to the wire, folks. Number 2 on our wonderful countdown is
Decolonization.
decolonization. That is correct.
For those who don't know, decolonization is the undoing of colonialism, which took place between 1945 and 1960. As many as 36 Asian and African states achieved autonomy or outright independence from their European colonial rulers through this process.
2 of the most admirable decolonization movements occurred in India and South Africa. These movements were led by Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. Not only were these rebellions nonviolent, but they successfully gained freedom for all their inhabitants.
Hey, didn't we already do apartheid?
Yeah, I know. It was number 9 on our countdown. But anyways, the movement that occurred in India was a huge deal because they finally defeated the British Raj, which had been in place in India since 1858. As for the rest of Africa, these decolonization efforts were not as successful or peaceful.
Freedom, life, liberty. We want our land back. Get out of our country.
Listen, you rebellious idiots. We are the Europeans, and we control you. Unless your oil supply just decides to stop working, we're gonna stay here.
Oh, buddy, you asked for it. Yeah.
What is this? Ha! You actually think we would agree to the Europeans are only allowed to stay in our country if they pay us at least half of the money they make from selling and exploiting our resources?
Bang, bang! Haha, nothing's in our way now. Independence for all!
Succeeded at gaining independence. The new countries had their impact in the future.
Yeah, they made a big impact in the United Nations.
What? How? The United Nations was already established before decolonization.
That's because they were a big factor in the changing balance of power within the United Nations. In 1946, there were only 35 member states a part of the UN. But as the newly independent nations of the Third World joined the organization, by 1970 there were about 127 members.
So what? Just because the UN got a lot more members doesn't mean anything really changed.
Okay, come on, Ben. We're supposed to be teaching them about decolonization. So, I shouldn't have to teach you.
Well, viewers, we've reached the time to reveal the #1 event in our countdown to the top 10 events in world history. We've been counting down to this, so please try and keep calm. Will, I thought you were done with the broadcast.
The producers told me I wouldn't get paid unless I finished the special.
Anyway, #1 is, drum roll please, I'll do it myself. You know what, Will, I've been very annoying this special, I'll let you take this one.
Oh, thanks. #1 is
World War II!
Thanks. I knew I should have taken that job at Channel 11.
Anyways, you may be wondering why the world's second total war is number 1 on our countdown. However, well, why is...
World War II is number 1 because, in essence, everything that has happened since the Second World War has been in some way a result of the war, first and foremost being the post-war baby boom. All the United States soldiers returned and went to work. Most of our parents are results of that boom.
Oh, and the shift in global power balance. The United States firmly established themselves as the one true world power, emerging victorious in both world wars and defeating former superpowers in the process.
The end of the Second World War also ushered in a time period of new political trends, which we talked about earlier in the countdown. With all the Allies fighting over new land, especially Germany, the division between the Soviets and the United States became clear, as it was now at the forefront of global attention.
World War II also had great cultural impacts on the world. New ideas and cultural ways spread from country to country, soldier to soldier, including a new use for news and broadcasting. People at home were more informed of what was going on overseas to a level never reached before. Essentially, all the events included in the special that occurred after World War II are direct results of the war.
Can I play Hitler now?
Will, no! You have an unhealthy obsession for playing Hitler. Get help.
Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast. Thank you for watching our special.
Make sure to tune in to next week on a special of As the World Turns. Hammocks, friend or foe?